My name is Choi. I am the owner and founder of Ruff Roll Academy. I've been partnering up with Miranda and just creating webinars to give you guys more accessible information about your care and training with your dogs. So thank you so much for Miranda and her team. You guys are amazing. And I'm just going to kick off with some topics about puppy training. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll get started. All right, welcome everyone to the Puppy Starter's Guide, Many Mighty Steps Towards Lifelong Success. So welcome. Today we're going to be talking about puppies, but I also want to emphasize that this topic is not just for puppies. It's for all dogs and all pet guardians that want to have a great harmonious lifestyle living and learning together with their companions. So here are some general topics that we're going to be going through to just understand more on how we can have a comprehensive approach on developing a harmonious lifestyle with our puppies. So we're going to be understanding how dogs learn. What are the things that drive behavior? And those are the dogs drinking. I'm going to turn down the audio. But what drives behavior is something that we'll be exploring a lot about as we dive into the later pieces, how dogs learn. We also know that we and our dogs learn in very similar ways. And I hope to share more about that as we proceed. And we'll talk more about early stages in the weeks between 3 to 14 weeks, where it's what we call a sensitivity period, and we'll get more into what that could mean for our young puppies in a minute. And we'll wrap things up with some practical tips. I'm a real hands-on guy, so I love to keep the information simple and focus more on doing. And so for the remainder of our webinar, we'll be getting into some practical puppy tips that anyone, even the older puppies, can also benefit from. And it's just B-roll footage. You'll see some footage of some of the moments that I share with my dogs to kind of explain. So that's what is going on in the background. Okay, so this webinar is really for every parent, whether you're starting your journey fresh with your puppy a few weeks, or even with a puppy that is aging to an adult dog, and you want to kind of shift things towards the right direction, especially if we have some behavior challenges. Learning these principles is a great place to start with all of that. And one thing we like to focus on is this type of learning is universal for all different types of dogs and breeds, and applicable to just having a well-rounded understanding of how we can live well with our dogs. I like to talk about a quote by Sam Gaines. She is the head of the Companion of Animal Department at the RSPCA, and she highlights many problems arise when people lack the proper understanding of when we bring our dogs into our homes. And these impulse purchases lead us into rush decisions and trying to understand our dogs. So I'm so happy to be able to provide some information to you guys so we can better equip ourselves with. There's it off button. Yes, to learn about dogs is to understand how behaviors work. And like dogs and puppies alike, they learn through consequences. Positive consequences encourage desirable behavior, while the negative ones guide them away from harm. Sometimes negative consequences can be something that we looked as uncomfortable and unpleasant, but it actually helps to steer our dogs from harm's way. But as thoughtful teachers and supporters to our dogs' welfare and their well-being, we always want to center our dogs' learning through positive experiences. And one thing that we do that is by making sure that we use positive conditioned emotional responses. So CER on the second bullet point just means conditioned emotional response. So whenever our dogs experience life, whether it's through a positive or a negative experience, they develop a positive emotional response or even a negative emotional response. And how those experiences accumulate really shaped our dogs to either avoiding certain situations or actually engaging more in certain situations. So for example, I'm sure we're doing a lot of potty training at home, and we're trying to have our dogs be more calm when we're petting them. So good times to make sure that our dogs learn that it's a great situation to be calm is to look for them to get petted while they're calm and giving them treats, or even when they're going to the bathroom and going to the potty and giving them treats, they're going to develop that positive emotional response that not only it will make and promote your dog to do more of the potty skills, but it can also influence them to enjoying that process. And that is the real core piece whenever we're doing training, to make sure that our dogs have that enjoyable experience in order to have a better understanding of why it's a great idea to do some of the things that we would like them to do. So some examples of some negative conditioned emotional responses, for example, can be things that suddenly scare your dogs, yelling or scolding, corrections, more old school ways of training have been found to be possible conductors of those negative emotional responses. And that's why in modern day age, we do want to lean in on using positive emotional responses by making sure that our dogs get these reinforcement, the things that they enjoy from those moments to develop those feelings, of course. I think one key part of positive socialization really stems in from our puppies benefiting from those moments that really shape them to enjoy the world around them. And that's where we can use that type of training. Puppies come into the world with a clean slate without any prior experience. It's our duty to really fulfill those experiences with those enjoyable outcomes. This not only minimizes the damage and the stress that they can feel from maybe something that is uncomfortable, but it also teaches them to do the right things that we would like them to do. And there's just some clips of my dogs just enjoying themselves. One way we can do some great training is to give our dogs treats while they're relaxing. It's a great way to develop a positive emotional response. And it also teaches them there's a positive emotional response to doing certain behaviors as well. So how dogs learn involves two general aspects, and that's classical and operant conditioning. Classical conditioning, it involves our dogs getting a treat for maybe some sort of from hearing some sort of sound. So in the clip on the left side, you'll see this young puppy learn that, you know, whenever I have the spoon out, that means that they're about to get food. So whenever the puppy sees the spoon out, that they know that food is about to arrive. Now, when our dogs understand this, we can time when the spoon comes out when they do certain behaviors. And that piece is actually what operant conditioning is. Operant conditioning is when our dogs choose to do something, and when they receive that reinforcement, in this case, the food they have, they're going to start to put two and two together of, oh, that behavior I did has something to do with that food, something to do with that spoon coming out. So what you'll see as the puppy's standing on a mat, he's learning how to stand on a mat, offer calm behavior as a way for me to take out the spoon. So it's a great way to teach our dogs and to work with them force-free. It increases the behaviors that occur more often. And as you see, and if I keep rolling this clip, you'll continue to see that the puppy learns to offer more and more calming behavior, right? So the reason why we want to focus on positive experiences is because it increases our dog's, ability to do more things. And with negative uses of or negative consequences or punishment, correcting our dog or saying no, it will decrease the behavior, but it also comes with a cost of our dogs being fearful and apprehensive about the time that they're experiencing. So making sure that our puppies are happy helps them to learn, also helps them to also have a great time growing up into adult dogs. And when we do really great training, we might be able to come up with things that look very amazing, like the ones that we see here, right? And it all starts with our dogs understanding that if they do certain behaviors, that they get a certain outcome to happen. And there's Molly. She gets a treat for that. She's a good girl. Okay. So some things we want to talk about are early life stages. Now, let's explore these life stages. Roughly about 3 to 14 weeks of age. This is the period when a puppy's brain is highly receptive to learning. They're just absorbing so much into the world. And this is when they are very likely to grow certain habits that form into as they are adults. So making sure that they have positive experiences during those sensitivity periods contribute to a happy, confident puppy. And by being very aware of this information, we can be gradual in introducing our puppies to things that will be more, scary or more sudden. So be aware of where we're taking our dogs into places as we're within this 3 to 14 week period, because it's the period that essentially shapes their life moving on forth. And it's a very sensitive time and a very useful opportunity for our puppies to develop into happy, healthy puppies, both physically and also emotionally, and also behaviorally too, if we focus on making sure that we use these positive ways of training our dogs. So I have some clips of some puppies and just them enjoying calm petting, right? There's certain moments when our dogs are more calm, and if we look for those times to pet them, that's also a good time to, reinforce that behavior. So making sure that our dogs learn, to be calm through the engagement of those things that they enjoy. It's a great way, and you can train for calm just as well as you can train for something that's more alert too. So that's a good example of, just using handling as a way to reinforce behavior. We also see this young puppy on the left-hand side learning how to come out of a crate calmly, because I know that could be a very stimulating thing for a lot of puppies. So just teaching our puppies how to, come out of the crate calmly, right, by standing and maybe sitting on a mat, right? Those are great ways to, give them opportunities to learn through positive experiences. Okay, so moving on very quickly, we're going into our practical tips. So one of the first practical tips we want to teach our dogs is marker training, or a marker cue essentially. A marker cue is something that, teaches our dogs when a treat happens. This is the idea of classical conditioning, just like as we talked about earlier, where our dogs learn that if there's a certain uh, sensation or a certain occurrence in environment, some people use a clicker and then they feed their dog food. So the clicker in that example is the marker, and it signals to the dog that, hey, you're about to receive the reinforcement or something that the dog wants. So the first step to teaching any dog anything is really to teach them that marker cue. So it could be a yes, or it could be a click of a clicker. But a few things we want to make sure of is when we click the clicker, we always want to make sure we give our dogs something that they want. And when we say yes, we also want to give something that they want. Sometimes it's very common for us to kind of get trigger happy with our clicker hands, or even when we're using like a yes verbal marker, where it might be common for us to, repeat that cue. So thinking about just saying it once and giving our dogs a treat is very important, because that's what they understand. And that's my little tip of, working with marker cues whenever we get the chance to. It becomes the foundation of how our dogs learn. Without the marker cue, our dogs won't understand what is the behavior that we want to teach them. It becomes that exact way of connecting with our dogs, communicating with them that, yes, that sit that you just did is exactly what I wanted you to do. And for that to happen, we need the marker cue. So it's a very simple way to teach our dogs, but it's very effective as well. All we have to do is we're going to say yes, give our dog a treat. You're going to do this a few times to a point where your dog will most likely get the picture. You'll probably get a look in their eye where they know that, oh, she's about to give me a treat when after the yes. And usually when you see that little perk in your dog or that little glimmer of light, that's also um an example of our dog showing that positive emotional response, right? So it's very interesting when we use these principles because when we apply them, you'll be able to see your dog's emotions. You can see them, responding positively. We want to make sure that our dogs have that emotion really related to the behaviors that they do because it's really our dog's enjoyment that really drive behavior. And so great things to do is what can we think about doing with our marker cue and giving our dogs that desirable outcome? So some things that you could think about doing with marker training is saying yes when your dog is going to the bathroom in the right areas. For puppies, you would definitely want to take them out early and often. And it also gives us plenty of time to use that marker training. Being present to say yes, giving them food often and frequently will help them to build a very strong, reliable behavior of going to the bathroom in a certain area if that's something of your goal. Quiet behaviors, it can be trained just like anything else. When our dogs are quiet, if we're able to just say yes, give them a treat, they're going to start understanding that things that they do within that moment of you saying yes is related to that food as we continue to make that happen. The beautiful thing about training is we don't always have to set aside time, which in certain cases it will be necessary, but overall, we can look for dogs to be calm and quiet and to give them a treat or to approach them with pets. And it's a great way to, keep our young puppies on a path to understanding us more intuitively. So some things to think about is just how we can also use our marker cue to really incorporate into our everyday life. So that's my first little tip.
Or just keep
Here
reading the bio
is
book.
Gary
So
and getting a
green light,
treat.
it's still very
Right.
expensive.
And that's really all it is. You saying yes and your dog getting a treat. So how do we apply these things with different situations, especially with our dogs that get more stimulated when we come home? Um, We want to look for opportunities to engage them when they're calm, when they're standing and sitting and being attentive. Without jumping or doing the things that are excitable, you can give them treats and they'll start to be calm. But let's say you got to the point where your dog's starting to offer calm behavior, and you want to take it to the next level of, working on making sure that they're calm with hands, because we know how important that is with guests and people coming home, coming home or elderly coming to visit. Teaching our dogs how to accept calm handling is a wonderful place to start. And we can use our marker training foundations that we talked about in our previous slide to really help us out with this next piece. So working on calm handling, it teaches our puppies tangible exercises that relate to them getting food, something that they enjoy, for doing something that's calm. So one thing you can do is work on calm handling. What it looks like is we're going to learn to pet our dog calmly. And what you see on the right-hand side is this young
Puppy.
border collie German Shepherd puppy. And what the puppy is learning is when I pet him calmly and he's standing calmly, he gets treats for that. We want to find a right time and place to introduce this training. I suggest after the puppy has played for a little bit, or maybe when they're just coming out from a nap, times when they're a little bit more relaxed to introduce this aspect of training. Anyone can work on calm handling and be successful when we're able to start to engage our dogs when they're more on the calmer side. So if we have a more rambunctious puppy and a puppy that's more full of energy, it would be a helpful precursor step to helping the puppy calm down, maybe giving them some enrichments, giving them something to chew on, some tug before working on this. But working on calm handling is a great next piece to work on once your dog has already relaxed or settled in, just so it's easier to introduce the idea of calm handling. Some things that you'll see through this video is I'm gradually starting to pet the puppy more in sensitive areas such as the hand and the feet, and that gets them more stimulated. So whenever you feel that that's happening, you can always back off and kind of start back the from the back end and kind of work your way around. So a tip to consider is whenever we're doing calm handling, our dog's back and shoulders have the least nerve endings. So it's nice to start around those areas and then just gradually go through and step by step introduce other areas. First starting with the back and then kind of finding other body parts along the way that are less stimulating, such as the shoulder blades or even the hips. And then you can work your way to other sides once you started with something that's easier. And there's a purpose to me waiting to handle near the puppy's paws and limbs because that's really stimulating. So just going at their pace is a really good approach. Our puppies are very honest with how they're feeling. So if things are more stimulating, I always recommend to back off, maybe try other areas. So maybe something I would suggest to San that's petting the puppy right now at this point is to maybe find some more calming activities, maybe eating food and then going to petting him in the back. Yeah. But yeah, we all get to learn something, even myself as I'm watching through these videos. And that's why this puppy stuff is for everyone. We can always learn from something. Okay, trading items. This is very important. It's a important aspect because a lot of times puppies end up stealing and taking things that end up, something that we overlook, like some chapstick on the ground or something like a sock. What is important is for us to make that moment of our dog like actually getting those things less uneventful. Um, Not saying hey and chasing them, because one thing that we do know, trading items is a better form because it prevents our dogs from learning to run away from something that they have. By trading with our dogs, it's a great way to have this exchange with them, to have them learn to realize that there's other alternatives aside from the things that they have that is better. This way they don't feel conflicted if they have something in their mouth and you try to reach out and to take that object. So it's very common for puppies to learn that once they have it, it's theirs. So that's why dogs are doing it, not because they feel a certain way of wanting to control the house or anything, but merely they had an interest towards it and they might be taking that item. So being able to trade our dogs is a great opportunity to give them something enjoyable. Let them know that whenever we approach them when they have an item, that they're allowed to get something better. And many times dogs end up developing resource guarding whenever they have something that they steal, because they start to feel uncomfortable with the people that are approaching them when they have those items. With enough repeated outcomes, our dogs then develop a negative conditioned emotional response that can form and that can lead to our dogs being fearful of having those things taken away, or even show stress or even aggression as a way to ward people away from those objects, because they felt stressed and felt uncomfortable about people sharing space. So having a proactive approach from the get-go as puppies is such a great opportunity to build a harmonious relationship with our dogs where they'll learn that if they even have an item, that if there is any sorts of exchange, it leads to that positive consequence, just kind of like what we talked about earlier. That's going to be such an important theme because by making sure that our dogs are enjoying themselves when they are exchanging that item is a great way to let them know that what we want them to do, maybe disengage with an item is actually more fun than they think. But have we start with just trying to take things away without making a positive experience for our dogs, that's where the conflict happens. So it's not just only about making sure that our dogs have a positive experience and for them not to have a negative one. It's also for safety in terms of making sure our dogs have a positive experience. It is dangerous for dogs to learn that it's stressful to be around with people, whether it's them stealing things for in this example. So it's helpful to go through those steps. But trading items is in practice, it's pretty simple. We just want to be prepared when our dogs have something. So what I mean by preparation is making sure that we always have that higher value item. Whatever it is that you're trading, if we don't have anything on hand or something, and our puppy has ran off with something, uh, we want to make sure that we can run to the fridge or run to that area that we have those items prepared. So preparation is so much in everything, especially in dog training. So if we don't have those higher value items and we have a puppy, a part of puppy proofing the house also involves having high value items and foods that we know that our dogs are going to go for, especially if they're given things that they really enjoy or there's something that's really interesting. We want to make sure that we always have something. But once we have that item, or items, we'll always be able to come prepared to make sure that whenever we come to exchange with our dog or even approach our dog with something, they treat us or experience us more as a butler more than an actual policeman that's here to like take something away or to take them to doggy jail. So being able to make sure that we give our dogs things not only works in making sure that our dogs had a positive experience, but it can also work in our favors of developing a strong exchange. So in this video, you'll see that this puppy it has this rope toy, and what we want to do is think about having a high value item. In this case, it's that it's some wet food. And what we'll do is we'll think about placing that food about 2 or 3 feet away. And as our dogs are engaging with that item, we then exchange. It's very important that the dog stays engaged with the item before we pull and take the item away, because we know that once the dog has eaten and has chosen to eat, that's where they feel good about the experience. And they're enjoying it because they continue to eat. But a good sign to take away the item is when your dog is continuing to eat. That continuation is a great signal for us to know that, okay, it is safe and it is a green light for us to be able to trade with our dog. So, so if there's some things I could take away, just to wrap this one, is have the high value item to also exchange when the dog is eating, right? When the dog is eating. And just do it more often and you'll have a dog that's more than willing to exchange items with you. Okay, socializing is so important, and most of our puppy training is going to be focused on socializing, making sure that we expand our puppy's horizon towards the world that they just came into. And we want to make sure that we filled in those voids of uncertainties and those new avenues of novelty with positive experiences. So a great way we can do that is to pair off marker training. What marker training does, it pairs off the pairing of food with that positive outcome. So when we're able to do that, when we're able to pair out food, play, petting with new situations, and our dogs are able to develop what's again called that positive emotional response. This is how we can make sure that our puppies feel great about themselves. We want to make sure that when we're introducing things to our puppies, that it comes in at a low intensity and something that can help our dogs have a period to adjust into when they come into um, that encounter with those new situations. So some examples that you can engage with is pairing off food around in a car while it's not moving. Because somewhere that your puppy will realize that they go around often is going in and out of cars. Being able to introduce our dogs to the cars when it's not moving and just letting them have a pairing of food or something that enjoys smelling the car. It can be a great place. What you'll see here on this right-hand side is this border collie puppy watching some balloons. You'll notice that I start at a low intensity where I'm far away from the object, just enough where the dog can see it. But we want to make sure that when our dogs are engaging with those novel experiences, that one, they're able to take food. If your puppy is not taking food, that just means that the situation is too intense. So we have to lower the intensity. Or you can give your dog or puppy distance and start from a further distance to pair off that food. But what you'll see is this puppy noticing those balloons,
Good girl.
right? And then
Those balloons.
she
Yes.
looks at that and she gets the treat. So what's happening is the dog is looking at the balloons. We're using our marker cue, saying yes,
Yes.
and then giving her the treat. This dog is okay with looking at the balloons and how she was just interacting in the space. So I decided to throw the food towards the direction of where she can see that item. Some dogs may benefit from throwing the food away if they're more scared. But something to think about if you're using the marker training. After you give your dog food, if your dog is more comfortable, to focus on giving the dog food in that certain area. If they're less comfortable, you can think about having the food being away. One moment, let me close the door. Someone came home, sorry. Let's see here. So pairing off food in a carrier is also a great opportunity. If you're working on playpen training, making sure that we have a lick mat is also another good opportunity to work on making sure our dogs are comfortable and safe. Pairing off some play at a new park is another way to introduce that socialization. So being able to engage with our dog with the game and tug, running around with them, if that's something that they enjoy, it's also another great opportunity to do that training. Other ways that we can socialize our dogs aside from using the marker training is using enrichments. So things such as a lick mat or a snuffle mat in a setting can be a great way to contribute to, helping our dogs ease into an environment as well. So there's many different ways we can do it. You can start out with marker training, and once your dog is settled in, going into some enrichments is also a great opportunity. Okay, so that is going to conclude our webinar for today. And what we'll do is we'll take the floor for any questions that may have come up along the way, if there is any. And If not, I can also share some puppy experiences that I've been having and some things that we've been going through. Kind of feeling it.
Ugh. It sounds like Kelly has questions.
Oh,
Kelly,
Kelly.
normally I would have folks just put them in the chat, so you can put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Either way.
It's easier just to unmute myself. Thank you. Thank you. That was really interesting and great. I got some good ideas. I have a couple of questions. And the most important one is I'm getting a new puppy for the first time, and I'm stressed out about that period of time where socialization is so important and they're not yet vaccinated, and how
Yes.
to navigate that. And I'd love your tips from either of you.
Yeah, that period is so sensitive. And one thing we don't realize is there's a lot that we can do within our time. It doesn't have to be our dogs literally touching contact with the ground and being on grass to socialize. Having them in carriers and working on those early stages of just showing them new nuances. It can be any nuances. And that's why I do enjoy having our dogs start their socialization, outside when they can, I mean, inside when they can hear certain things, um, and maybe pairing that off with food. Just, I think we can always put our dogs in the right place and to be successful when we're able to just make it easy enough for them to get started with things.
Yeah, I would add, I think socialization, there are a lot of things that we underestimate the importance of. So one of my favorite examples is the vacuum cleaner, that a
Uh,
lot of dogs hate the vacuum cleaner. And that's actually a really fairly easy thing to help condition puppies to when they're small. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's really helpful. Having people come over can be another really great, easy, safe way. I also think we tend to think about like, oh, if a puppy touches the ground, they're going to get parvo and distemper. And realistically, there are certain places that are extremely dangerous and certain places that are extremely safe. So taking a puppy to a dog park, like a large public dog park, is not a good idea. However, letting them touch the ground on like a street with not a lot of dogs, like again, there's some risk, right? But the risk is much smaller. So there are certain things that we can do that have minimal risk. There are things like going to a Lowe's or a Home Depot, where you can bring a blanket or a basket and put your dog in the cart and have them come around with you. Or, in some places, if you don't usually see dogs there, again, that's a pretty safe, like very rarely trafficked compared to other places. So I think that there's a lot of this kind of stuff that we can do. Anytime we can bring out a blanket, anytime we can walk a puppy on surfaces that are not as porous, right? So like taking your puppy out to a place that has grass and it's recently been raining, there's a lot of stuff that can like live and continue to live when it's wet out. But for a lot of us, we might be in places where there's actually quite a few pretty safe places to be. My other favorite example is just going to a puppy kindergarten class with somebody who has positive reinforcement classes going, because we know that most places that, again, good places that run classes, they're going to be using hospital grade sanitizer, they're going to be cleaning directly before kindergarten, and every dog that comes through the doors is going to be fully vaccinated if they're not in kindergarten. So the risk of unvaccinated dogs is slim to none. So I think there are a lot of ways that we can do that without putting our puppies at risk.
That's great to hear, because I did sign up for a puppy kindergarten with every dog. And my
Perfect.
breeders, I don't know if you should do that. And I'm like, well, they say they're really,
We paid Kelly to be here just to say that and to give a bunch of, yeah. So we use hospital grade sanitizer right before our puppy kindergarten. Puppy kindergarten is always the first thing of the day for that reason. And again, because we only allow known dogs, and because our facility is, it's going to be cleaned and all the things, like
Right.
we're not going to have unvaccinated dogs there who are going to be the most risk for other things. So here in Texas, distemper and parvo are very real concerns, right? So we take it very seriously. So the advice that we're giving is based on what the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behaviorists puts out about things like kindergarten. And we're always happy to work with folks if they're like, hey, I live in this area, I'm not sure what I have access to that would work. We're always happy to coach folks through that as well.
Fantastic. That's great. I'm
Yeah,
gonna have
no,
so many more questions as I go.
yeah,
What were
I think it's so important to just expand the horizons of where that could be. And those are some great tips on just places that people are already sanitizing and already treating the places that are with that care that you would like your puppy to have. So I think that is such a great place. And some things I also thought about along in that conversation is going to malls when they just open,
Mm.
right? Where there's nothing going on. There's been a staff that's been cleaning the environment. And usually those places are sanitary enough to just have our dogs go into those places. So something I was thinking about.
Yep. And
Thanks.
friends' houses too, you know, it's the same thing where like, again, dog parks are not a great place for a puppy. However, if you have a friend who has a very savvy, very social, friendly, fully vaccinated dog, doing play dates is a great way to do this, right? Many folks don't necessarily have the right friend. You know, most of my friends have reactive dogs, so this wouldn't help me out if I had a puppy, which is why kindergarten can be so helpful, especially if you're not super behavior savvy and you're not sure if your puppy's having a good time, right? So there's some benefits to having help there. But visiting with friends is a great way to socialize, bringing your puppy to friends' places and just being thoughtful about, you know, again, are they having a good time, right? So we don't want to flood our puppies. We don't want to overwhelm them. I think that's where sometimes we harp on socialization to the point where people think that they need like 12 activities every day or their puppy is going to be a monster, which is just not true, right? Quality over quantity. But there are some great ways that we can take puppies to have them watch things and see things and interact with other people and dogs in ways that are safe for them and safe for everybody.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I have a, this is a smaller question, but I'm thinking about, you know, when we're training puppies and we're giving them lots of treats when we're training, and how do we work that with they're not really supposed to eat all that much?
No, yeah, that's gonna be a challenging question just for different kinds of dogs. Certain dogs are gonna be more like your labs are just gonna want to keep scarfing down food. But I think, one thing that we always talked about whenever I started working with dogs is just starting with these little bite-sized portions. And that carries its own weight when you start working with them outside because they'll get used to doing that. But literally taking the same measurements of the food that you're giving your dog and having that be paired off side by side with the same amount of treats that you've been preparing could be a great way to having some eye levels of seeing like how much food you're using, but being able to feed those bite-sized pieces. I think it could be such a great way to kind of make it stretch. But
And a lot of
that's
puppies,
it more
especially when
sometimes.
they're small, they will work for kibble. Sometimes we need to mix it up, right? So like we might give some higher value treats for certain things, but you can get away with using their kibble for a lot. We recommend against, there are some folks who are like puppies should work for every morsel of their food, and we don't want puppies to be stressed out. Like we want them to be able to eat, but it's a very good idea to, set out like half of their food for the day, and say they're going to get a smaller breakfast and then we're going to do a training session right after it. Like we're not waiting for them to be super hungry, we're giving them food, but we're going to use their kibble for training because why not? They're going to think it's really fun, right? So as long as we continue to do this in a fun way and make sure they're not feeling pressured, like if I don't do things I'm not going to be allowed to eat, right? We can use their kibble for most things and puppies will be excited for it, and then we can reserve non-kibble treats for like oh my gosh, we're going to see really exciting things and I want this to be extra special for you.
Oh, this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, just that pairing of just making sure that we're guiding our mindset and our way of approaching training with what works for them. I think it's always a good rule of thumb. So if we kind of feel like, oh, am I going to cause conflict to our dog? That might be a really good signal to figure out, there might be another alternative to go through.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions?
Not for now. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming out today. And Stan, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure I will have many things for you in the future. And I'll see if anybody on our Instagram has posted any questions that they'd like for you. I'll send that to you later. But thank you so much for being here. And I think our next webinars, we've got one about introducing stranger danger dogs to new people, one about cat body language, all kinds of fun things coming up. So stay tuned. I hope to have this posted tomorrow on YouTube if it cooperates, and then we'll see you next time.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Miranda. Thank you so much,
Thank
Kelly.
you. Have a
for your
good
time
one.
here.
Bye.